Hey everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. I'm CJ Lou, and we are talking about this book, which is part of a trilogy from Gary Renard. This latest is Love Has Forgotten No One, The Answer to Life. And we're talking during the break about how I think all these books of A Course of Miracles is about forgiveness, right? And so Gary, welcome. Uh, so these books are all about forgiveness, and this is now a buzz. A mainstream concept. People are talking about forgiveness all the time. What did you mean by forgiveness in this book? You said this was kind of a different flavor of forgiveness. And what do you think are some of our misconceptions about forgiveness?
Well, sure. And I'm going to give you this in as short a way as I can, because normally when I talk about this, I'll speak for maybe 5 or 6 hours.
Wow.
I'm going to try to give it to you in 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay.
If I do, I win a prize.
Yes.
So it's kind of like the short version. But to make it brief, the kind of forgiveness that I'm talking about, the kind of forgiveness that my books in the Course of Miracles are talking about, and my teachers in the books aren't in cursive, because I'm not really the teacher in the books, I'm the student, and we carry on a three-way conversation. And the kind of forgiveness that we're talking about is not traditional. It's not the kind of forgiveness that the world normally thinks of as forgiveness. Normally, when you forgive somebody, you're forgiving them because, well, they really did something, and you're forgiving them, and so you're really so spiritual and so superior. And what that does to your mind is it makes the whole thing real. It makes the whole thing real to your mind. This is why I mentioned earlier the power of belief. If you're making it real and you're forgiving them because they really did it, then given the way that the mind works, your unconscious mind, which knows everything, will interpret your forgiveness to mean that not only have they really done everything, but you've really done everything that you think that you ever did, and it will keep you stuck here. And the reason that I say that is because your unconscious mind not only knows everything, but that includes the truth. And what it knows is that there's really just one of us. You know, we look out into the world with the ego, which is based on separation, and we see almost 8 billion people. We see trillions of objects, millions of things to choose between, and we think that it's all true. We think that it's all real, and we make it real with our belief.
Mm-hmm.
But the kind of forgiveness that A Course in Miracles teaches is saying, you know what, it's not real, and it's not true. So now you can forgive people not because they've really done something, which in your mind will keep you imprisoned here. You can forgive people because they haven't really done anything, because you're the one who made them up in the first place.
Wait, okay, so I get it. So what you're saying is the basic way that people think about forgive you. I forgive you that you slept with my best friend, or my best friend slept with my wife or husband or whatever. In that type of forgiveness, it assumes that this whole story and this whole thing is even true. It's continuing the delusion that these things that are happening on this level of reality are true. And you're saying when we fall into that, we're not really falling into the bigger picture, which is, you know what is there to be forgiven? This is all just a play and a story and moral actor. So really, we're just playing various roles and let it go. It's just a story. You're projecting all sorts of values and things onto the screen that would not be there if you weren't projecting.
That's right. In fact, Shakespeare was right. The world is a stage, and each must play his part. And by the way, my teacher said that Shakespeare was enlightened, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah.
He was a really smart guy. And it's like,
Shakespeare or your teacher or both.
both, absolutely. Yeah. And the whole point is this. If your unconscious mind, once you get way down deep into the mind, the truth is there's only one mind. It's kind of like Carl Jung's collective unconscious. If you get down deep enough into the mind, there's really just one mind, because there's really just one of us. So we all have the same mind, and your unconscious mind, knowing that there's really just one of us, will interpret anything that you think about another person to really be about you. And that's a very sobering thought. You know, people wonder why they're depressed. Just look at the garbage they've been thinking their whole lives about other people, thinking that those thoughts were going to somebody else, that those thoughts were going to another person, and they didn't realize that those thoughts were actually just going to themselves, because there's not really anybody out there. That's a trick. That's an illusion. There isn't anybody out there. You
I'm sorry. I was recalling my college roommate. She was always like, "Oh, he's looking at me that particular way," or "I think it's because I'm wearing this thing that they're looking at me." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? No one's looking at you." And she's like, "No." I'm like, "Are you kidding? They're on their own minds, worrying about their whatever things. They're not looking at you." And so she was going on. We were walking down the quad, and we were going down the stairways, and she said, "I think people are looking at me." And because I was so sick of this whole conversation, I started going like this, like. I started pointing at her so her illusion could be, so she could really see what it looked like. Because I was like, squinting and pointing and making googly faces and pointing at her, so she could really see what it looks like when people are looking at you in a horrified way. But it's a funny thing, right? We make up all these crazy stories about how that are ego based. But so it's the forgiveness. It's the forgiveness that Persa and your other guy. Sorry, I feel really bad. I don't remember their names.
Arden person.
Arden.
They forgive you.
Thank you. Sorry. If you're there. Well, of course they're there. So the forgiveness then is forgiving ourselves for forgetting that this is a illusion. What's the forgiveness in this particular way that we have to think about it?
Well, it's interesting that you said that about forgiving yourself, because probably the greatest teacher of A Course in Miracles, who just passed away a few months ago, Ken Wapnick, he said that a good Course in Miracles student is a bad Course in Miracles student who forgives himself. And that is really true. And the whole thing that I want to emphasize about this kind of forgiveness is that it takes responsibility for the fact that it's your projection. You know, the American Indians used to say, "Behold the great mystery." Well, A Course in Miracles says, "Behold the great projection," because that's what this universe of time and space really is. There isn't really a universe of time and space. There is a projection of a universe of time and space. And the projection is not being done to you. You know, this world is not being done to you. This world is being done by you. And it's a totally different way of looking at things.
Yeah, take responsibility, man. You're creating this reality and the illusion that you're seeing, right?
Right, but don't take responsibility in a bad way. Don't feel like, oh, I made up this terrible thing because all these people are dying and all these tragedies are happening. The reason that this is a good thing is because what you really made is nothing. Because there's nothing there. Not really. So that leads to a totally different kind of forgiveness. So the way that A Course in Miracles puts it is, it says forgiveness does not pardon sins and make them real. It sees there was no sin. And in that view, are all your sins forgiven? And I might add that only in that view are all your sins forgiven. Because if you're thinking that they really did it, then your unconscious mind will interpret that to mean that you really did it, that you really did everything that you think that you ever did in your history, every unkind word that you've already forgot about with the conscious mind. You're going to think that the whole thing is true and that you're guilty. But if you go through life thinking, well, they didn't really do anything, so I can forgive them, not because of what they've done, but because of what they haven't done, because they haven't really done anything.
Right.
Then your unconscious mind will interpret that to mean that you're innocent because you haven't really done anything.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Fire It Up with CJ show. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you learned something or found something that you'd like to try out. It means so much to me that you're listening to the show, and love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.